All right, this is it, our last unit for biology. Unit 8 focuses not just on the living things in a community, but also how they interact with the world around them. So we are going to shift a little bit away from just pure biotic to some abiotic, things that aren't alive as well this unit. In our first section, we are mainly going to be talking about ecosystems and energy flow through those ecosystems. Right? As part of that, we're going to talk about food webs and biomagnification. And we're going to start to talk about how that changes when different parts of that community change. So, first, let's get some just ground rules, basic definitions out of the way. An ecosystem is all the organisms that live in an area together, plus the physical environment itself. So, it's the environment and everything that lives there. We're going to define it based on its abiotic factors, the things that aren't alive. Things like its humidity, its what kind of water and how much water there is there, precipitation, snowfall, rivers, lakes, oceans, salt water, fresh water, all that stuff. We can use geology, the kinds of rocks that are present to talk about it. If it's sand, how much sand is in the soil, if it's just straight sand, or is it loamy, or is it different kinds of soil, all right? All that stuff. How much sunlight it gets. When is that sunlight? And of course, the average temperature of a day is always going to be useful. When we do that, we can use a few different methodologies. The kind of first one that we had put out in the 1960s by Holdridge was this life zone classification scheme. It is not the one we're going to be using. I just wanted to show you how it takes into effect uh, different altitudes, humidities, and also what they called latitudinal regions. So, where it was on the globe, north south. Then it added in how much precipitation happened in millimeters per year and what they called a potential evapotranspiration ratio. So, how much water could come out of the plants and area as it leaves in the sun of the day. What we will use is this one by Robert Whitaker in 1975. It is much easier and it's simplified. It also has pretty much all the biomes that we are going to discuss. It contrasts average temperature in degrees Celsius with annual precipitation, but this time instead of using millimeters, Whitaker uses centimeters per year. The big version of this here is what we're going to use. The smaller version in the top right, I put just so you can kind of see the general trends that the higher you go, the hotter it gets and the wetter it gets. Meanwhile, if you go towards the bottom left, it becomes hot and dry. As you move farther to the right along the x-axis, you get colder. And because it's cold enough to freeze water, we start getting snow and ice instead. I do want you to draw this one in your notes as best you can. Putting a piece of paper over the Chromebook is a great solution for that. Based on what you just drew, right, I would like you to try to give me some possible example temperatures and annual precipitation rates for these three biomes. So just do that off to the side. Just give me like the X, Y values that might fit into those. You don't have to give me the whole range, just pick pick 1 point for each of these biomes. Right. Another way that we sometimes see different biomes represented is in a chart like this that contrasts dryness, so humidity, precipitation, with increasing temperature, but then tries to take back into effect those latitudinal ranges. So we see Arctic, subarctic, temperate, and tropical. Those are all on the globe, right? Arctic is going to be closer to the poles, tropical is towards the equator. Again, this is something I'm just kind of showing you. I don't need you to memorize it or anything. Trying to expose you to some different ways to think about these. We are going to go into these biomes much more in depth in class. Right? As we study ecosystems, we are also going to use biotic factors. So, what things live there? How are the living things interacting? Right? This is also going to include non living things. So things like fossil fuels can be in effect here, as well as waste products. Back in middle school or elementary science, you probably did some food webs, right? And much like way back in Unit 2, we changed our idea of producers and consumers to autotrophs and heterotrophs. We're going to keep using those names, all right? But I want to introduce these levels to you, all right? So primary consumers or primary heterotrophs are our herbivores. They only eat plants. Secondary consumers are going to eat the primary consumers. Tertiary eats the secondary. There are levels above this, but a ecosystem has to be very large or very thriving to support much bigger organisms, right? Like a quaternary consumer. Humans are most likely at the top of a lot of food chains. But we don't do a lot of eating of wolves, red foxes, and black bears, so we're not going to really worry about that here. I would like you to know these definitions in order. They get bigger the farther we go down. So as you have walked through these and wrote them all down, make sure you annotate that you need to know them. You need to know them in order, right? So you know what an organism is. You know what a species is. We've done all those multiple times, right? A population is all the members of the same species in the same place at the same time. So all of the red foxes in a specific location at the same time of year. A community is all the populations in the same area, whereas adding a physical environment to the community gets us an ecosystem. I've used that word biome a few times already this video. A biome is just a large region characterized by a specific type of climate and types of plants and animal communities. And the whole globe is a biosphere. It has all of the biomes in it. Another way to look at that is through this kind of layered diagram here where we have just one individual. Then we get the population of all of the same species in that area, community being multiple species, ecosystem adding the environment itself, biome stretching that across a larger portion of the globe, and then the biosphere being the globe. All right, last thing for today is this idea of biomagnification. Some particles are going to stick around in a body, and one of those is energy. Energy goes up the higher we go in a food chain. This may not make sense, but we're going to do some stuff in class that hopefully helps with this. Organisms lower in a food chain have less energy per individual, right? But there's usually more of them, right? If the molecule we're talking about is a bad thing, like a toxin, a lot of times we're going to consider that biomagnification, where it goes, the toxin increases the farther you go up. You can see in this diagram. We can also see that in sea food webs like this, where the plankton are going to get a little bit of mercury, and the higher up we get, the more mercury there's going to be. I want you to not necessarily draw this, but use it to answer this question. What would happen if tuna were removed? So just give me a quick hypothesis, one complete sentence. And the reason we care about biomagnification is for things like mercury and heavy metals. They accumulate easily in fish, and so we need to limit what kinds of fish and how often we eat that fish, or we can have some bad things happen to us. We can get sick, right? We're going to continue talking about this stuff in class, and I will see you there.